A staggering 70% of lottery winners go broke within a few years. It's usually blamed on poor money management skills. So when construction tycoon and multi-millionaire Jack Whittaker broke the record for the largest single-ticket lottery win, he stood every chance of surviving the so-called lottery curse. He got off to a good start by making generous donations, but quickly spiraled into alcoholism, gambling, and then things took a horrifying turn. A body was discovered in his house, and a fire claimed what he had left. Here's the incredible story of how $314 million ruined his life. Was it the lottery curse, or did he bring it all on himself? The win. On Christmas Eve 2002, millionaire Jack Whittaker stopped at a supermarket in Hurricane, West Virginia for 2 bacon-stuffed biscuits and to refuel his car. He didn't usually play the lottery, as he had a rule of only buying a ticket when the prize reached $100 million. However, that Christmas, the jackpot had hit $280 million, and if an individual won it, it would make it the largest lottery payout in American history. So Whittaker decided this draw was worth his time, and, not short of cash, bought $100 worth of tickets. That evening, Whittaker checked his numbers and discovered he'd missed out on the jackpot by just 1 digit and thought he'd won $10,000. Life-changing to most, but a relatively small sum to Whittaker, so he went to bed. Then, on Christmas Day, he woke up to the news that the previous night's announcement had been wrong, and the winning ticket was sold in the store where he bought his. He rechecked his numbers: 5, 14, 16, 29, 53, and 7. This time, he matched every single one. And thanks to a last-minute flurry of sales, the jackpot had reached $314.9 million. He later described how he felt. "I got sick to my stomach, and I just was at a loss of words and advice. You know, I was really searching for advice. And it's like Christmas Day." When things opened up again on December 26th, Whittaker quickly claimed his prize, which he took as a lump sum of $113 million after a colossal amount of taxes. Then he was launched into his first press conference. "The very first thing I'm going to do is sit down and make out 3 checks to 3 pastors for 10% of this check," he said. And he was true to his word. His first act was to donate $11.5 million to the Church of God and other Christian charities. A good start. Things got off to a good start for Whittaker and his community. He rehired the 25 staff members he had to lay off before Christmas and donated $7 million to build 2 new churches. Then he gifted the lady at the convenience store who made his favorite biscuits a $123,000 house, a new Jeep, and $44,000 in cash. As news of his generosity spread, thousands of people came out of the woodwork. They'd call, send letters, and even harass him in public. Every time he tried to attend an event like a basketball or baseball game, he was swarmed by around 150 people. When he attempted to visit the store for his favorite biscuits, he found huge crowds who'd been waiting for hours to beg him for money. Some had crossed state lines to meet him. Others had traveled all the way from Israel. It was overwhelming, suffocating, and forced him to hire off-duty officers. For protection, to manage the requests, he set up the Jack Whittaker Foundation with an initial grant of $14 million. The aim was to help the needy, improve the Little League Park, and buy playground and school equipment for local children. He hired Jill, the clerk who sold him the ticket, to manage the mailroom. She later recalled, "There were so many letters that they wouldn't even deliver the mail. It was nothing for us to sit for 10 hours just opening envelopes. People wanted entertainment systems, people wanting Hummers, people wanting houses, just absolutely bizarre things." In total, Jack gave away $50 million of his fortune, which was around half. In keeping with his Christmas Day win, he'd become a real-life Santa Claus for a while, at least. Unfortunately, it took just a few months for the greed and money-grabbing to destroy Whittaker, transforming him from jolly old Saint Nick into a drunken sleaze. He was no stranger to strip clubs before his win, but with the money, his attitude was different. It was like the money was eating away at whatever was good in him, said Misty Dawn Arnold, who worked at the Pink Pony Strip Club. It reminds me, like Lord of the Rings, how that little guy Gollum was with his precious. It just consumes you. You become the money. You are no longer a person. Whittaker disputed this, saying it wasn't his greed that was affecting him, but rather that of others. The constant requests for handouts were draining, but worse were threats, thinly veiled extortion, and the lawsuits. Having run his construction company successfully for years with no complaints, a suspicious number of claims started rolling in. Within 12 months, 460 ex-clients had brought lawsuits against him, and he had to spend $3 million. He was even sued by Caesars Atlantic City Casino for allegedly bouncing $1.5 million worth of checks. Whittaker responded by countersuing, claiming that the casino actually owed him and they'd promised to buy a slot machine he invented. Ultimately, the money grabbers took their toll. "I just got to the point that I just couldn't tolerate what was happening to me anymore," he said. "I would fly off the handle, and if somebody wanted to fight me, I'd fight them. I just didn't care." As he spiraled downward, he spent more and more time at the strip club against his wife Jewel's wishes. He quickly became known for flaunting his cash, slamming tens of thousands of dollars down on the bar, and also for his busy fingers. Initially, the staff tolerated him, but as his attitude worsened, so did theirs. At first, he was like, "I'm Jack Whittaker. I want all this money. Yay for me," said Arnold. Later, it was like, "I'm Jack Whittaker. You'll do what I say. I have more money than God." Who talks like that? Soon, Arnold and his partner, the assistant manager at the club, had had enough. They knew that Whittaker often carried obscene amounts of cash in his car, just because he could. So, on August 5th, 2003, they seized the opportunity to spike his drink and steal $545,000 from his Hummer. Whittaker reported the theft to the police immediately, and Arnold and her partner were charged, but never indicted. Luckily, his private investigator was able to recover the money, which he found stashed behind a trash can. Shockingly, almost losing $500,000 taught him nothing. He continued leaving vast sums in his car, which was broken into several more times in the next few years, including on one occasion when he got drunk and abandoned his car in the middle of the street with $100,000 on the passenger seat. Obviously, it was stolen, but when the police arrived, Whittaker was charged with drunk driving. As he descended into alcoholism, he became even more obnoxious and took his handsiness to the next level. Multiple complaints started surfacing, and in 2003, he forced a floor attendant's hand towards his pants at a racetrack. She sued in 2004 and settled for an undisclosed sum. Brandy Bag. Throughout his troubles, Whittaker's one ray of light was his granddaughter, Brandy Bag. They'd been close before the win, and afterward, he showered her with gifts and a $2,000 weekly stipend. He bought her 4 cars, including her dream, custom powder blue Mitsubishi Eclipse. He wanted her to inherit everything, including his companies, when she turned 21. Unfortunately, Brandy was only 15 years old when her grandfather hit the jackpot, and she was much too young to know what to do with thousands of dollars a week. Tragically, it attracted the wrong type of people, specifically drug dealers, who wanted her for her cash. She doesn't want to be in charge of the money. She doesn't want to inherit the money. She just looks for her next, he said. Her Mitsubishi became littered with junk food wrappers and loose $20 bills, which would fly out of the window as she drove. Whittaker sent her to rehab and treatment facilities multiple times, but she just couldn't stay clean. Sadly, things came to a head in September 2003 when her friend Jesse Tribble passed away from an overdose in one of Whittaker's houses. His parents, broken by the news, came forward to say that they believed that without the lottery money and Brandy, their son would still be alive. Then, in December 2004, she went missing. Around the same time, Whittaker was arguing against yet another DUI in court. So he decided to stop fighting it, surrendered his license, and checked into a rehab facility. On the way, he called the police to report that Brandy hadn't been seen for 5 days. Heartbreakingly, after 2 weeks of frantic searching, her body was discovered, wrapped in a plastic sheet and dumped behind an abandoned van. She was just 17 years old. Her cause of death was listed as an accidental overdose, but the person who moved and wrapped her body was never found. Whittaker knew that if he hadn't won the lottery, Brandy would still be alive. "My granddaughter is dead because of the money," he said, "and she was what it was all about for me. From the day she was born, it was all about providing and protecting and taking care of her. You know, my wife said she wished that she had torn that ticket up. Well, I wish that we had torn that ticket up too."
Well, I wish that we had torn the ticket up too.
The lottery curse continued. Losing Brandy was the worst thing that could have happened to Whittaker, but the lottery curse wasn't done with him yet. According to him, in 2006, he was robbed and left completely broke. Apparently, a team of fraudsters with phony checks had visited 12 branches of the City National Bank, cashed them, and taken all his money. Supposedly, he was left with nothing, which came to light when he stopped paying the woman he sexually assaulted at the racetrack. "I intended to pay, but can't without any money," he said. Then, in 2008, after 6 years of stress and grief, he and Jewel finally called it quits and got divorced. They'd been married for 42 years. Horrifically, the very next year, they lost their daughter Ginger, who was Brandy's mother and Whittaker's only child. She was found dead in her home of undisclosed causes. She was only 42. Finally, in 2016, his uninsured family home burned to the ground. His second wife was inside at the time, but thankfully emerged unscathed. Whittaker spent the rest of his days trying to hold together his struggling businesses and escape the spotlight. He stopped talking to the press and refused to give any interviews for less than $15,000. Not because he needed the money, but because he was so sick of the lies being printed about him that he figured if he was going to give a reporter ammunition, he might as well be paid for it. "That's the only way I can live with the way they print things, and if I'm getting paid, they can write whatever they want about me," he said. "I'll be their I don't care." Whittaker passed away from a long illness on June 27, 2020, at age 72. His biggest regret was losing Brandy and how his actions had tainted his legacy. "I'm only going to be remembered as the lunatic who won the lottery," he said. "I'm not proud of that. I wanted to be remembered as someone who helped a lot of people."
But money doesn't rule the world. Money